Welcome, everybody, to Two Way. Thank you for joining. I'm Mark Halperin on the set of Wonka 7, The Revenge of the Oompa Loompas. For some reason, I look a little orange in the room I'm in, so hopefully you'll enjoy that and you'll appreciate my Oompa Loompa quality. If you want to get in the conversation, if you're here on the Two Way platform, please raise your hand. If you're watching on YouTube, thank you for joining. If you're going to participate in the chat, as always, try to maintain presumption of grace and civility. The chat's gotten better lately, I'm told. I don't always have time to read the whole thing on both platforms. But please, the whole point of this platform, peace, love, and understanding. Try to learn from people you disagree with rather than fight with them. And let's all try to get along. If you want to ask a question here, as I said, raise your hand. We're going to go for a while here tonight if people have questions. I'm going to run through some stuff. Very focused on the battleground states. Had a lot of time to do reporting today because there were no campaign events for some reason. All the candidates decided to take the day off. And so I'm going to talk a little bit about the battleground states, a couple things from Pennsylvania and from Michigan, where there's a new poll out tonight. But I'm going to start with the pseudo, quasi, para, meta battleground state of New Hampshire, where it is still unexplained and largely unremarked upon why it is that Kamala Harris is going to New Hampshire tomorrow. Hopefully there'll be some light shed on that. One of the things that has succeeded for Donald Trump in this cycle, particularly when he was running for the nomination and when he was running against Joe Biden, was to be aggressive, to go to Ohio after the derailment well before Joe Biden went, to aggressively speak out on issues, to put himself in the news in situations that were favored to him, to go do photo ops like in fast food places in a way that he thought contrasted well with with Ron DeSantis and with Joe Biden. So tonight we learned that tomorrow, when Kamala Harris goes to New Hampshire, Donald Trump's going to do something aggressive to dominate New Hampshire. Put that up. Jack Heath, longtime news executive in New Hampshire, used to be at the one commercial TV station in New Hampshire, WMUR. Now has a radio show. We have that tweet that a lot of political people go on. Do we have that, guys? Let's see. Anyway, Donald Trump is going to go tomorrow on, there it is. Take me out of this so you can see. There you go. Donald Trump's going to go on Jack Heath's radio talk show, The Pulse of New Hampshire, and appear in the morning on Jack Heath's show. That'll get covered by all the other press in New Hampshire. And again, I'm not saying it's going to revolutionize the race, but he will, try to create the impression that he's competing aggressively for New Hampshire. I have no idea what that means because, again, I still don't understand why the vice president's going, but that'll put New Hampshire in the news tomorrow. And that's the Trump campaign might win the nice news cycle just off of that, because there'll be questions about whether the vice president's on the defensive in a state that everybody assumed was hers to win easily. All right, let's talk about Michigan. New poll in Michigan out tonight from TV station WDIV and the Detroit News. The horse race is tied. It depends on if you look at the five-way, the three-way. Depends on if you look at likely or registered voters, but it's basically tied. But I want to show you three questions from this poll related to who do you trust more on an issue. And you can see that it's the same old familiar story. Trump has huge advantages on these issues that are the most important issues to voters, and yet he's tied, showing that obviously there's other things dragging him down. So first, Trump versus Harris in Michigan on the economy. Let's take a look at that number. Go ahead and pin that and unpin me. All right. Who do you trust more to handle the nation's economy? Trump, massive advantage over Harris, 51-39. Next, who do you trust on immigration? Handling the border and immigration, Trump, massive lead, 55-37. I'm rounding up for Harris to try to make it a little closer here. And then finally, who do you trust on foreign affairs? Trump, much more narrow lead. There was another question about keeping the world safe that was less close than this. But anyway, the first two are obviously the two of the more important issues. Again, Trump massive lead, and yet tied in the horse race. This will be what we're dealing with for a long time throughout. So Pennsylvania, key to the whole race right now in terms of the Electoral College. I've been asking people two questions in the state, national strategists and campaigns. Two questions. One is, who's currently ahead in Pennsylvania, and where does Pennsylvania rank in terms of 1 through 7 of the states Harris is most likely to win? One, it would be Wisconsin or Michigan. Then the question is, where's Pennsylvania? Some people have it as high as 3rd. Some people have it as low as 6th. One of my sources gave me a list and put it at 6th. And that led to the highlight of my day, which is, I hope we have that picture. There's very few places of honor in American political coverage, political journalism that they're difficult to obtain, but not everyone can get this as part of their day. There I am, ladies and gentlemen, on Karl Rove's whiteboard. That is prime real estate in American politica. And so Karl took this list that my source gave me and thought it was my list. I feel bad because I could see why he thought that. But as you can see here, this source of mine, who I trust very much, very smart person, puts Pennsylvania 6th, the 6th most likely state for Harris to win. If that's true and Harris loses Pennsylvania, she's almost certainly not going to win. There are mathematical ways for her to win. Some of them go beyond mathematics, but very tough for her to win if she doesn't win Pennsylvania. I talked to two people today, Democrats who know the state very well, and they both said that they thought Harris not only was behind in Pennsylvania today, but they thought she was likely to lose the state. They didn't rule out that she could win it, but they thought it was unlikely. And if you believe that, what these people believe, and if you believe that what my source does, that her chances of winning Pennsylvania are quite low, you can't make her the favorite. And you almost can't even say this race is a toss-up, because Harris without Pennsylvania is not in a competitive competition. She could win it, but it's not a tied race. If you read Nate Silver's endless discussion of his model, you'll see that the main reason that he has, amongst the main reasons, I think you might say it is the main reason, but it's amongst the main reasons, even though he believes Harris is winning in the polling, he has Trump with a better chance of winning. A big part of it is, he says, because he doesn't think she's necessarily ahead in Pennsylvania, and her chances without Pennsylvania are so low. So there's lots of stuff to watch, but I love this question of ranking the states for Harris. If you put Pennsylvania 3rd, you're basically saying her best path, and again, as I've said, maybe eventually her only path, maybe, is to win the 3 Great Lakes states, the 3 Rust Belt states, and the Nebraska congressional district. But this is the ball game, right? This is it. The question of where you can get 270 electoral votes. If Harris can't win Pennsylvania, and again, some Democrats doubt that she's in a strong position to do it, very difficult to see what her best path is. She can't win one Sunbelt state because none of the 4 Sunbelt states have as many electoral votes as Pennsylvania. So she'd need a couple of them, and it's got to be at least one of the eastern of the 2 Sunbelt states in order to pull this off. So with that, I'm going to open up to questions. Ask whatever you want. I've got a couple things to say about the media that I'll work in later. But for now, I just want to go right to you all. Ask away, whatever is on your mind. As always, for those who are new and may not know, even if you've been here before, tell folks where you are, who you're supporting, and what's on your mind. And we will start, as would be appropriate, with Mark from Pennsylvania. Mark, again, tell people who you're supporting, where you live in Pennsylvania, and what's on your mind.
So I am probably 65-35 Harris at this particular moment. I live in the Northeast Mountains in the Poconos of Pennsylvania, where if I were to tell anyone in my county of Pike that I was supporting Harris in any form, I'd probably be ostracized from my local gymnasium. It's a very.
All right, let's hope your neighbors aren't on two-way.
You know what? That's a very good point, Mark. I had not thought of that.
That's right. I think the hat and the glasses and the beard give you a fair amount of cover.
Give me a fair shot. So I wanted to say briefly, I want to reference this morning's two-way, Mark. The former governor of North Carolina had the exact same political mailing that I received in my mailbox this week.
Now his came from the state party. Do you know who did yours?
No, because I didn't pick it up. I get an informed delivery scan and my email lets me know what mail is coming. And I saw it in my email yesterday coming for today, but I haven't gotten to the box yet to grab the mail.
All right, I may ask you to do that after you do your question.
Well, I'm going to do. Yeah, I'll bring it for tomorrow. I'll bring live action prop for tomorrow morning.
Great. Go ahead.
So yeah, I really did like her speech yesterday on labor. I thought it was a really good message. I thought it was delivered very well. I thought the crowd reactions were great. I like the little back and forth she had with one of the partitioners when they yelled, he'll be in jail, and she was like, let the courts handle that. We're gonna focus on November. I like the message. So I was impressed with that. But to state in Pennsylvania, she's 6 down easy here. 6 down easy.
What makes you say that?
Even people who I speak to who are supportive of her just based on base politics, right? D's and R's, are saying that there's not a lot of substance, but it's so much better than what the alternative is. The folks that are here that are for Trump are all in for Trump. They're turning out, every single one of them. And I don't think Harris is going to turn out enough of those independent voters who are kind of on the fence about her to take the state.
Okay, that's fair. Interesting. Do you have a question, Mark?
No. I think I'll just enjoy the rest of the evening.
No. All right. Let us know. What your mailing says, and we're curious to know who sent it, because I doubt it was the North Carolina party. All right. Exciting moment here. Thank you, Mark. Exciting moment here. This is the closest we're going to get tonight to recreating one of our favorite shows. Eleanor, welcome. Thank you for joining. I want to ask you and John to colloquy a bit about where you think the race is. And particularly, let's start with the question of whether the tragic situation in Israel right now and the campus protests, which seem to be starting back up at some level, what you both think about whether that will play a significant role in this campaign. Eleanor, you first, please.
I think it's kind of unknowable. They may also get a deal to bring the hostages back. It may also give Harris some spine to maybe take a more assertive stand about what she would like to see with Netanyahu and pressure on him. I mean, I think that's a fluid situation, but if I had to put money down, I think the Democrats see Harris as the only thing standing between us and Donald Trump. And I think that unity is going to hold. That's my guess.
Okay. Thank you, John.
In relation to the foreign policy question, I think if there is a hostage deal to which Israel and Hamas agreed,
right,
which I find almost science fictional, but let us stipulate that is a deal, it will be very, very, very good for Harris. I mean, it could be like a knockout blow good for Harris. It removes at least temporarily a major issue from the table that I don't think she or the Biden administration are handling in a way that will quiet people who really care about this, are not satisfied on either side with the way that they are handling this. If they have a success, obviously she can ride that success. So the question to me is, what happens if things are where they remain, which is in a kind of tortuous circumstance in which Israel is winning the war militarily, but is riven with agony and sadness and pain over the condition and fate of the hostages, and that this sort of carries over to how Americans feel, react, think about this. And that's an opportunity for Trump, because the opportunity for Trump is that he can sort of do the Gordian knot. He can slice through this and say, Israel needs to win. That's all that has to happen. I'm projecting strength. Biden and Harris are being weak. They're not supporting our ally, like that. And that's clarity. And he has the benefit, would have therefore the benefit of clarity. I also think, since you bring up the campus protests, those are really bad, depending on where they are and depending on how much focus there is. Those are really bad for Harris, because they not only will evoke disorder and decay, and Trump says he can be strong, and you can believe him or not believe him. I'm not going to argue whether or not he has the right line on this, or whether it's going to matter. But his whole thing is, I'm strong, she's weak, she's dangerously liberal, she lets criminals out, and she doesn't care about illegal immigrants, and this is part of the disorder that she will pursue. And he will have some meat on the bones of that, because it's going to be very hard for the Biden administration to respond in a tough manner to the campus protests, because they're worried about the youth vote. I think they wrongly think that the youth vote will be more on the side of being nicer to the protesters than I do, but that's their call. And so it's a very fluid situation. We don't know what's going to happen. I totally agree, but I think that if things follow a linear path now, that's an advantage. Those both together act as advantages for Trump, if, as is always the if, and that's the big if he can stay on message and be clear about what it is that he's accusing her of and why she's wrong about it, because he'll start talking about that, and then he'll start talking about Brian Kemp, or he'll start talking about January 6th, or he'll start talking about something else. Well, he'll be confused, he won't make sense, and then he will kind of fritter away the clarity. And I think the debate on Tuesday, go ahead. I'm sorry.
The sludge throwing is just beginning, but so far the dangerously radical liberal and all of that does not appear to be working. And I would look at what's happening in Israel with these enormous protests day after day. So, they may finally dislodge Netanyahu from his radical, dangerously conservative position.
I would give that.
So I'm not betting either way, but I'm betting on Harris's survival, to stay cool and to keep focused and not take the bait. And I think she does that. She puts a lot of this stuff to bed, because it's pretty obvious that Trump and his campaign are pretty desperate for all of this, mud to start working. And they seem to be convinced it will work, and it has in the past, but because it worked in the past doesn't mean it's going to work now. We don't know.
That's absolutely true.
Close election.
That is absolutely true. We don't know if it's going to work. If there's meat on the bones, you're calling it mudslinging. I don't think it's mudslinging to call her dangerously liberal. You have to demonstrate, you have to make the argument that she's dangerously liberal. If you just say dangerously liberal, that's toothless. That only appeals. Okay, and the other thing is, there is a 2% chance that the Netanyahu government falls as a result of the protests. So if you want that to happen, I honestly wouldn't bet the farm on it or anything. So
I would just like his position on the hostages to be shifted, and I would like the killing to stop in Gaza and the West Bank.
Everybody would like the killing to stop, and his position on the hostages is not going to shift. I mean, his position on the hostages, we don't actually know, to be fair. And then I don't want to stand on a soapboard, but according to the Biden administration, over the last 3 weeks, when they come to the Israelis and say, this is how we think this should proceed, this is what Tony Blinken says. I'm not talking about Biden saying no when they say, is Bibi done enough? Blinken is the one who was negotiating this, and Blinken has said 3 or 4 times the Israelis are agreeing to what we are asking them to do. Now it's in Hamas's camp, and then the things sort of peter away. So his position rhetorically is, we are standing firm. Whether behind the scenes he is more fluid and flexible, I think that seems to be the case. But no matter how you look at it, no matter how you look at it, politically inside the United States, the question is going to be, will the strength argument that is Trump's only card, that's what all the data on the economy and all that, like, he's strong and they're weak. There are things that can help him make that argument and things that weaken that argument. His behavior last week, being so unclear about abortion, weakened that argument because he seemed confused and unclear and unsteady, and that's not what a strong person's like. But this is a dynamic situation, and you can anticipate that she will be flawless. I think that's probably, it's politics, so I don't think people are generally flawless.
I'm not betting on Kamala Harris to be flawless.
Okay.
I mean, please, no.
Okay.
But she's
All right, you guys.
She can debate.
Okay.
All right, let's bring in Michael Bix. And just from the looks of him, I think he's a Harris supporter from New Hampshire. Let me see if I'm right. Michael Bix, am I right?
Indeed, you are. I am a Harris supporter. But the thing to also realize about Harris and Israel is I have 2 daughters, both Bernie supporters, and neither one of them will vote for her because they basically tie her to what they say Genocide Joe. And there is a large, I do not know how large, but most of their friends are the same way. And I think the notion...
Michael, where do your daughters live, Michael?
One lives in Brooklyn, the other lives in Los Angeles, but both of them are registered to vote in New Hampshire.
The battleground state of New Hampshire.
And they're refusing, they will not vote.
And they're single issue voters. In other words, is there anything else they don't like about Kamala Harris, or just?
Well, one of them basically is, the whole thing about locking up sort of people for like truancy, and then her on marijuana laws. They are lefty kids, but they're sitting this one out. As much as their parents have been encouraging them that voting is important, they're sitting this one out, and I gotta believe they're not alone.
Michael, why is Kamala Harris coming to New Hampshire tomorrow?
Who knows? My assumption is that she's doing it just to sort of, wag a finger at Trump and say, I'm playing places, that you can't win. And just, I'm like trying to make the map as big as possible, even though she's going to win it. I have no idea. And I'm tempted to go see her, but I doubt I'm going to.
I thought the way cable news framed it was that the Trump people were pulling out of New Hampshire. She wants to nail it down. I don't know. I just don't think. Well,
the one thing I would say about New Hampshire is, I bicycle 25 miles every day, and the number of Trump signs to Harris signs is probably 10-1. That as with, I think, probably anywhere in the country, his supporters. I got a neighbor who is flying a Trump flag off the end of his dock. It's everywhere. And
Michael, you're a journalist.
Yes.
We were colleagues at ABC News. Yeah. What you heard a report is young people are not going to vote for Harris, and Trump mania pervades in New Hampshire. So you're predicting a Trump landslide, basically.
No, I'm not predicting. No, because I voted here enough to know, that the Democrats generally win, but the strength of the support for him in this state, just visibly, which, as a political reporter, just judging from the number of yard signs is not a really good thing. But it certainly seems that his support is very, very, the people who are here for him are here for him, and they've been here for years.
Can I tell a story that's just quickly, a story about 2016? So in 2016, my kids go to camp in the northwest woods of Wisconsin. And the summer of 2016, I was very dismissive of Trump's chances. Like all mainstream people seem to be. And I assumed that he was going to collapse and he was attacking Khizr Khan. And there was all that stuff where it was like, oh my God, this is just, Hillary can measure the drapes. And I was at a thing where Paul Ryan was talking about, well, if he loses by 10, this happens in the Senate, but if he loses by 5, this will happen in the House. If he loses by 4, this will happen, whatever. And there was no, like, what happens if he wins? And that was the Speaker of the House, So, but I'm driving through the northwest woods of Wisconsin and 60 miles from the Canadian border. And, there is no visible Hillaryism. And then on the way in this small town, Conover, Wisconsin, there's a lawn and there's a bus. And it looks like the Partridge Family bus, right? It's like a painted bus, school bus from the 60s. And it's sitting there in the middle of nowhere on this road, and the bus has been painted, and it says Trump on it. And somebody took this bus and spent days painting this word Trump on the side of this bus and doing this. And in the gift shops in Eagle River, Wisconsin, which is sort of like a redneck Riviera type of vacation spot, sort of lower middle class vacation spot with a lot of boating and stuff like that. All the t-shirts were Trump t-shirts and that kind of thing. So on the one hand, I know you're not supposed to count lawn signs. And on the other hand, I should have known that Trump was going to win Wisconsin, because if a guy spends 2 weeks painting a bus, something's going on. This is not just one lunatic. It wasn't lunatic. Like, it looked good. You know what I mean? So I just observationally, there are things that suggest spirit that are not, that are not the joy, just talking about joy. And maybe a guy having a Trump flag off his dock is a sign of that, like you say, that one should heed.
Well, I mean, the number.
I continue. Go ahead, Michael.
The number of pickup trucks you see with, like, an American flag and a Make America Great flag driving around. I mean, yes, this state is trending Democratic, but one should not underestimate the sort of how passionate his supporters are. I mean, because they aren't moving. I mean, I argued with the neighbor with the flag, and he just sort of, started telling me that January 6th was a myth, that basically nobody was killed. It was a peaceful protest. I mean, it was crazy.
The lies have taken hold. The lies have taken hold.
Well, no,
if you go through any conservative areas, you see Trump signs, and you're beginning to see Harris wall signs, but we're a little late to the party. So again, I don't underestimate Donald J. Trump. He's a phenomenon. He's spent 4 years telling us he didn't try to overthrow an election that he did try to overthrow. And he's, been honored with 3 Republican nominations for the presidency in a row. So I think it's tough. I think the Democrats are going to have to grind it out on the ground. And, lots of unknowables are going to happen.
Let me just say, Michael, hold on. Let me just say, I continue to be about the only person I know in the National Political Press Corps who's asking the question of why Kamala Harris is going to New Hampshire. It makes no sense, except if they think they're in trouble. One person said to me today, well, maybe they're in a little bit of trouble. It doesn't pay to go to battleground states before the debate. One visit, she locks it up. But between your daughters and your sign spottage and her going, I just can't rule out that the internal Harris polls show her in some trouble in New Hampshire.
Perhaps.
Just can't rule it out. And if she's in trouble in New Hampshire, a state of well-educated voters, high income and well-educated voters, not unlike Michael Bix himself, I won't say it's a canary in the coal mine, but it ain't great news.
Yeah, well, and I have one question for you guys, which is, I mean, Donald Trump is a creature of popular culture. I mean, he was created by it, and at some stage you become stale. And at least that is my hope for this election, is that basically his act is just become like stale. I mean, how much of a danger is that for him?
Well, it's certainly the belief of the Lincoln Project, but he did all the things he's done that outrage you, and he's even with Kamala Harris in Michigan. So for some people, he's not too stale.
Can I offer a theory about why she's going? I think there's an element of political hygiene here. The nightmare, the Democratic nightmare from the morning of after Election Day 2016 onward was people were like, you should be coming here to Michigan. Things are kind of going in the wrong direction. The campaign said, nah, it's not. We have all sorts of analytics. Everything's saying this. So maybe it's a sign they do not want to take anything for granted. They're a little worried, or maybe they're not that worried, but they're like, okay.
That's a good theory. But Michael, let me ask you about your daughters, if you don't mind, which is, it seems to me you and your wife would have lots of things to say to them about why they should vote against Donald Trump and therefore vote for Harris. So it just seems odd that nothing trumps, pun intended, anything he's done doesn't trump their concerns about Kamala Harris.
No, I mean, one is, they're both adults. One's 33 and one's 30, but no, I mean, it's like Genocide Joe. She was there. She's basically a cop.
What about climate? What about climate change?
Listen, I've tried that one, but they're like basically, and I think they're a little radical here, but basically the system needs to collapse. And if Trump is elected, the collapse of the system will happen quicker. So they're not typical, but they're both they both worked for Bernie, were avid Bernie supporters, and they're just like, look at her. And nothing she has said or has done has convinced them to vote for her.
Will they come home? Like, if it's really close? One of them will and one of them won't. One of them will and one of them will not. Because it doesn't matter if you live in New York; it doesn't matter whether you're going to vote or not, right? But
they're voting in New Hampshire.
Well, actually, the one that will. But
the one who votes in New Hampshire, she will not come home.
She will not. No, she's not. She's
even if it's like a dead heat and it's 2 days before the election.
And if Bernie is out there, rallying for Kamala. I still give them some hope.
Money may have to be involved.
He will be.
All right. Michael, thank you. All right, let's go to Georgia. We have two great folks from Georgia, Blaine and Charlie. Blaine, you first. Remind folks who you're for, where you are in Georgia, and then Charlie, and then you guys have at it.
I am just against the Democrats and everything that Kamala Harris puts forward out of her mouth. Basically, the reason that fine gentleman was saying his daughters were voting against her, or were saying they were going to. And I just wanted, as you and I have
Blaine, hold on 1 second. Tell folks where you are in Georgia.
Oh, Gainesville, Georgia, about an hour northeast of Atlanta. And as you
Charlie,
and I,
hold on 1 second, Blaine. Charlie, tell folks who you're for and where you're from.
I'm voting for Harris, and I live in Atlanta.
Okay, so you guys can have a nice, healthy Peach State conversation. Blaine, you first, and you guys.
First of all, are you a Georgia guy or are you a Georgia Tech guy, my man?
I went to Georgia Tech. I love the University of Georgia, though. I love the University of Georgia. My sister went there. My brother-in-law went there. But nothing brings me more joy than to see Georgia lose. And so
we're opposed on all fronts here. This ought to be good.
Yeah,
all right. The main thing that I wanted to talk to you about, Mark, and we've talked about is I don't think that a confident candidate, particularly in Pennsylvania, would be going out and campaigning with Joe Biden, as unpopular as he is, even though it's Scranton Joe and all that kind of stuff, and the optics of it, because what she did this weekend or yesterday, it was yesterday when she went out and campaigned with him, is you see Joe holding her hand, you see Joe hugging her, you see Joe kissing her on the forehead. You're not separating yourself from his policies or being the establishment when you're that close to him. And the Trump campaign actually took a photo of it today and posted it out and all that. I just wanted to know your opinion on the optics of that. If you know the great Democratic strategist James Carville saying that she needs to separate herself, and you know they're putting that out there today. So, what's your thoughts about that, Mark?
All right, I'll engage on that. Charlie, why don't you tell us what's on your mind too, and we'll kind of wrap them all together.
I agree with Blaine. You know, I don't think that's a good look for her to be campaigning with Joe that much, really at all. I mean, the way he interacts with people is just the way he interacts with Harris. I mean, he's always holding hands, and you know, he's very.
He wouldn't be doing that, Charlie. He wouldn't be doing that to Gavin Newsom. Was my point. Like, as a female candidate, she doesn't need that kind of optics. She does not need that. She does not need that, and she, you know, her biggest weakness is strength, and you know that those kind of things, and that didn't help her. It's being attached to him is not going to help her, you know. One thing before we get too deep in here, you know, Mark, I'm probably the youngest person ever that appreciates your McLaughlin group invitation, and just to be on a platform with Eleanor Clift, growing up watching you and watching that show was really helped shape some of my political views, and it's just fun to be on here with you. I really appreciate you. And but what I was going to say is, you know, the reason why I look at these polls, and I think that, you know, that Harris is going to end up doing better. She's going to end up coming up to where the state candidates are, the senators and the governors in those states, and they all have larger leads than her. And I think that she will grow to meet those, or they will come down, and they won't be that far apart. And I'm hoping that she rises up, obviously. But you know what I wanted to comment about was that, the reason why in that case, if she does come up, she would win. But the reason why I still think it's a 60-40 race in Trump's favor is because nothing sticks to this guy. You know, he's Vashugana. You know, he's nasty, right?
That's a good Georgia word.
It is a good Georgia word, you know, and he's, you know, he's it's not pleasant, you know, and you know, I'll just say it this way, you know, if I hire industrial engineers that go to Georgia Tech and I interview people, right? And if anyone had told me, you know, I don't know if she, you know, if that other person over there did she turn black, or, you know, things like that, you know, I definitely would give anyone, even President Trump, grace, you know, for a comment, but I would never forget it, right? And it's a pattern with this guy, okay? And it's unbelievable. So basically, Harris has to be perfect for her to win, and Trump doesn't. You know, he's not going to be, right? And one thing I thought was really, he plays by different rules. And one thing I thought was really, really smart by Trump, that stood out to me, that is his thing about IVF and his abortion stance. You know, he led on it wanting to be free, and it's a good idea, right? And he's going to use that in any abortion debate against him to be like, I'm pro baby. I'm for this women's reproductive stuff. I want to be free, and it's a populist idea. Harris should copy it. And that's just an example of Trump's great political skill. And I think even though, you know, they're asking him about, does he support the bill on 6 weeks? He won't ever, he still is ambiguous, you know, he's not very clear. He doesn't say like, you know, I want 6 weeks. He will never say that. He doesn't want it.
All right, crazy. Charlie, thank you. Blaine, my answer to your question is my instincts are the same as yours. It seems like clinging to and being so publicly close to an unpopular president whose record you don't want to run on, you know, entirely, seems like a mistake. At the same time, he is popular in Pennsylvania. You know, the other day we did over under. It may be one of the few times they campaigned together in Pennsylvania with labor on Labor Day. Seems like the right time, if there is one, and the physical displays of closeness. I think, you know, that just happens. That's just like life. I don't think it was planned. I think it was spontaneous. I want to ask you both a question and then bring some other folks in. Blaine, in thinking about Georgia and the race between Harris and Trump, what's the best thing Harris has going for her to win Georgia?
Gwinnett County. Yeah, how does Gwinnett County and It's all because we know what Fulton County is going to be. Trump has to limit the avalanche in Gwinnett County, and I think because of the affluency there, and Charlie would agree with me, I think that some of the economic policies may be even too much for some people who are maybe leftwardly leaning to take, because there are some very, very wealthy people.
But in terms of an issue, or Charlie, hold on 1 second. In terms of an issue or a trait, Blaine, what's the best thing she has going for in Georgia?
She's not Trump, and that she is very, very pro-abortion, and that would be in the more metro areas.
Yeah. Okay, Charlie, what's the best thing Trump has going for him in Georgia? Personality, trait, or issue?
The best thing he has going for him is his his base of support is just so rock solid. It's just everyone has an opinion, and I guess my question would be for Eleanor on this before we go would be, do you see Kamala coming up in the polls and matching very much to these statewide candidates, which I think are really, really holding back people, the Republicans? I mean, if they nominate someone half normal in all these races, I think they win, and I just wanted to know what your thoughts are on why the state candidates are polling higher. The Democratic state candidates are polling higher than Harris. And I think it's a fact of name ID, really, because even when I do my local polling here, going to the grocery store or whatever, and I ask people, are you voting for Harris? They look at me like they don't know what the hell I'm talking about. And I say Kamala, and they say, oh, yeah. And so I wonder what you think about that.
Eleanor, what do you think if you look at Senate candidates, gubernatorial candidates?
I think a lot of them are running against flawed Republicans, too. They're a bunch of military people that have had questions about their record. And I think that the Democrats have really uniquely good candidates in these red states. I mean, I would look at Ohio and Montana. I mean, these are class acts who have won repeatedly. So I think it's quality of candidate. And as far as Harris is concerned, some people are not persuadable. We're not talking about them. We're talking about people who are looking for an alternative to Trump, who didn't like Biden, but who may like the fact that Biden was more moderate. And I think when she appears with him, she doesn't come across as a dangerous radical liberal. So some of his sort of reform moderation comes across to her, and I think there are people who are open to her. Now, can she close the deal over the next couple of weeks, or is she going to say or do something or get so crucified by the Trump people that the door shuts? I mean, I think that's the part of this game that we're in right now. I've been pleased that she has been able to stand up as well as she has. I mean, she holds herself with confidence. You don't hear anybody talking about, gee, is she likable? I mean, all of those old tropes about women candidates seem to be out the window. And so I think we've got a pretty kind of even playing field here for her to assert herself on policy and in her performance and in the way she conveys her values, that she's going to get a second look by a lot of voters who might automatically have dismissed her. So I think it's an exciting opportunity time. There's a lot of potholes ahead. I'm not naive about that.
Look, Trump
Charlie and Blaine, thank you both so much.
I was just going to say, Trump's a very, very flawed candidate. Like, people are talking about him as though he has godlike powers. First of all, he lost in 2020. He threaded a needle and won in 2016. He was a genius at taking over and destroying and remaking the Republican Party in his image. That is not the challenge for this November. So if I were one of the Democrats who was on here talking about this, you're a little too scared of the guy. He's very flawed and people do not like him. He has a very high disapproval rating, and all of that is built and baked in the cake. He's the guy who has a problem expanding out his base. She necessarily has an easier promise there, in part because she is relatively new and is relatively fresh. and at least in people's eyes, and she's not him. And that's big, not just for partisan Democrats, but she's not that good at this. And we know she's not. And if she's turned into somebody who's really good at this, we're going to see that next week. We're going to see that at the debate next week. I see very little evidence in her behavior over the last month. Not that the campaign hasn't done brilliantly, but has she said anything memorable? Has she come up? Has she said, has there been a memorable soundbite? Has she done anything memorable? She hasn't. She isn't connecting in that way. She hasn't made bad mistakes, which is important, but I don't see her gifts demonstrated all that well. And she is now going to have this moment when 30 million or 40 million people are going to watch this, or maybe more, and then 100 million will see the clips. And if she knocks it out of the park, we could be seeing her just charge right to November. And if she doesn't, and she just does adequately or a little worse, and Trump doesn't blow himself up on the landing pad, which he could, because he's not that good either. He's good at one thing. It's important to remember that. Like, he's good at one thing, and he had an unbelievably fortunate enemy in 2016, or candidate to run against in 2016, with some very fortunate things that happened at the end of the race that nobody could possibly have predicted. So don't be so scared of him, really. But
John, if I tell the truth, I secretly think that the Democrats could sweep the whole thing in November. Actually, that is a possibility.
I think they could too.
I'm not that
you're
scared
worried about the evil eye. You're worried about the evil eye.
Looking at the realm of possibilities here,
right.
And I don't want to get caught underestimating the guy.
Right.
Yeah.
And
I'm saying,
okay. Anyway,
two things about a two-way before we bring in three-time two-way all-star Max. Max, very happy to have you back. Number one, Charlie and Lane, very grateful to you for extending the presumption of grace to each other in that conversation, which was quite civil amongst two Georgians. So thank you for that. The other thing is, I'm not saying two-way is the only outfit that could do this, but we did a little good crowdsource reporting. I got texted that flyer from Pennsylvania. I texted it to Governor McCrory, who was on this morning showing that he got it in North Carolina. Sure enough, identical piece of direct mail, one from the North Carolina party, one from the Pennsylvania Republican Party. Interesting that they've got this cookie cutter approach, and we'll do more reporting on it. But it's interesting that someone is coordinating that, probably the RNC. It's probably legal. I don't know. But I've seen this before, obviously. But it's just interesting that they're sending that same flyer into two states, into two battleground states, and maybe more. So we'll get on it. But thanks to both those guys for sharing. And anybody who lives in a battleground state, if you get direct mail, bring it to a two-way with you. Max, our audience grows daily, so there's some people inexplicably not familiar with you. So remind everybody where you are, who you're supporting, and then tell us what's on your mind, please.
So I'm in Kansas City, Missouri. I'm voting for Harris. I wouldn't say I'd say my support is growing thin, but I'll never vote for Trump. But my support for Harris is growing thin purely because I'm incredibly frustrated with her right now. She refuses to take any sort of serious questioning from the media and the public. If I was a swing voter in Pennsylvania, and I'd be really, really upset. Why is she not taking our questions and answering us and telling us what she's actually going to do? Because a rally where everyone's going to cheer for what you say, no matter how outrageous something you say is wouldn't sway me in any way. So if it's
Max,
so
if you got a couple minutes with her, Max, if you got a couple minutes with her, what are some things you'd ask her?
Issue-wise, I can't think of something off the top of my head. But how I would frame a question is, if we had a fundamental disagreement on something, what would you do to compromise? Because compromise is the cornerstone of American politics and governance. You can't we need more nuance in our politics and governing. You can't just have it one way. It's not what our way or the highway in America. We need nuances. So how are you going to make that more nuanced?
That's a good one. And Max, I don't mean to put you on the spot to formulate questions, but what are some topics you'd like to hear her address?
I want to hear more about what's that?
deficit? I'm just throwing out an option. What are some things you'd like her to address? Legalizing marijuana.
I don't think that'll ever.
How'd she deal with Putin? Like, what should she address? What issue? You don't need to formulate the question.
Foreign policy is a good one. You know, we live in a very complicated world that's growing ever more complicated every minute that passes. Like, what specifically are you going to do for the hostages? What specifically are you going to do to combat China's aggression in Asia? What are you going to do to help protect Taiwan? What are you going to do for Ukraine and to fight Putin? And like on the home front,
yeah, Max, just stay on foreign policy for a second. Based on what you know, because you're a close observer, how would her foreign policy differ from, say, Biden's or Trump's? Can you describe anything about what her philosophy is about how to navigate this dangerous world?
You know, I think I don't know how much different it'd be than Joe Biden's. I think what she can do is, if she can articulate an actual plan and if she puts out an agenda of like 16 points about what she wants to accomplish in foreign policy, it'll sound better than Donald Trump, because all Donald Trump says is, I'm going to end the war in Ukraine in 24 hours. Like this wouldn't have happened under me. Like, what would you actually, like, the war's already started. There's no going back and stopping it. Like, what are you going to do to help stop it?
So Trump says she's a socialist or a communist. How would you describe her economic philosophy?
I would describe her as a democratic leaning, or it's just like a classical, like 21st century Democrat when it comes to economics. You know, like, I don't think she's a socialist by any means. I don't think that's the right characterization at all. But, you know, she definitely pursues policy that tend to lean more democratic. Like, she wants to do the unrealized gain, or the more liberal, the unrealized gains tax. I think I read she wanted to do that. Like, that definitely is a more of a liberal policy than something that Donald Trump would propose.
Yeah. All right, Max, what's your question if you've got one?
Why isn't her team putting her on the ground in retail politicking? Because I think if she really wants to win Pennsylvania, I think that could be could help her. Like, talk to voters, convince them. And my suspicion is that they don't trust her to do well. And if that's the case, that's a damn shame for her and a damn shame for the American people, because we deserve to know that before 100 million people go vote.
So less about talking to the press than doing town halls or retail politics, right?
I want her to talk to voters. You know, if I'm an undecided voter that lives in the Philly burbs, I'm not going to be convinced by another rally in a convention hall with a bunch of people cheering. I want her to actually talk to people and articulate.
Eleanor, would you urge her to do that?
We have a debate next week where a lot of these questions are going to be answered.
But that's not talking to voters.
There may well be a second and third debate, which will have both the candidates in a town hall format. That's been a feature of past elections. She did a bus tour. I don't know if there'll be more of those. That's what the next 60 days are going to be about.
Forget optics and strategy. As a matter of like American civic life and learning about a potential commander-in-chief and leader of our country, should she be talking to voters in a way where people can judge how she interacts with them? Well, no, you said debates, which is talking to reporters.
Well, you can only do so much in the short period she's become the candidate. So she had a couple events this week for Labor Day. Now there's a kind of a downtime as she prepares for the debate, and then the rest will be rolled out. I mean, this notion that, you know, she's hiding it because she can't perform and people are worried about her. I mean, I just don't think that's the case. I think it's a very smarmy framing, which is taking hold, because I hear it not only from the right-wing press, I hear it from the so-called mainstream press as well. So there's always a new test out there for her. And where are the tests for Trump? And he gets a pass on everything.
When does he get a pass?
As far as I can tell.
Hold on.
So,
let me persist on this. This is someone who is, if she wins, will become president without campaigning in Iowa, New Hampshire, or South Carolina, on her own behalf, talking to voters. I think there's a value in that for us to be able to watch her interact with Americans, asking questions about what's on their mind. So
I agree,
so
but
I understand
she's been a
busy,
vice president for the last 4 years. It's not like
but
she's
in the
been
context,
hiding in a
well,
tunnel. She's
but
learned
we know,
something.
but we know that as vice president, her policy seems to be, I'm for whatever Biden's for. I'm against fracking. I'm against banning fracking now because
Well,
that's Biden's position. So
no, that's
but
not
all I'm
because
saying is, well, that's what she said. But
it's not
but my
because
point
it's
is, my
Biden's
point is,
position. It's because nobody can run in Pennsylvania without supporting fracking. She's
Well,
not running to
okay.
be president of California. It's like running in Iowa and saying you don't support ethanol. Some things are
Right,
just a given.
but-
And she's an
but I'm just trying-
internationalist like Biden, like a lot of mainstream Democrats. There's no crime in that.
I'm just trying to get you to see if you agree with me and Max. Max, I'm going to speak on your behalf.
I've agreed she
it would
needs
be
to
good.
talk to more voters, but
Okay.
whenever I say that, you raise the bar. She had her interview with CNN. Well, it was too soft. That's not good enough. So the bar is always going to keep going up, and I believe she's going to rise to the occasion. I think this is a pretty
Max,
spectacular candidate in her learning ability, and I think she's done extremely well, and I expect that to continue. And yes, there are a lot of challenges ahead, but to say because she didn't go through a primary, we've had vice presidents in the past become president who don't go through a primary process. This doesn't make her, less equipped to be president.
We haven't had too many lately. You've done that, but you're right.
I mean, the last one
Max, go ahead.
that was the case with was the Senate Majority Leader for a decade. I mean, you're attributing qualities to her that most of us don't know that she possesses, and I am as close a watcher of politics as you'll find in the United States, and I don't have a clue what she's done for the past 3.5 years. And if I don't, so I'm just saying, like, I think the campaign has been magnificent so far, but that's because she's not engaging.
Sorry, as a vice president, you are in the room with a lot of foreign policy things. You get the daily brief. You see up close what it's like to be a president. I mean, that's a pretty good apprenticeship, I think. And before that, she was elected statewide in California, I guess twice, Senate and Attorney General. I don't buy this somehow that she's not credibly equipped to handle the job. So she's
Max, go ahead.
I'm not saying she's not equipped. I'm saying I would like her.
She's got to demonstrate that over the coming weeks and months.
Yeah.
Let's get her into it with
I'm not
Max.
disagreeing with that.
Okay.
Max, hone up your questions because we're going to try to book her for you. But finish us off, Max. One last comment.
So, Eleanor, I don't disagree with you. I think she's more than qualified too. But the thing is, so many people I talk to don't think she did anything for 3.5 years, and they just don't watch politics as much, and they don't pay attention. And the more that she can bypass the quote unquote mainstream media that half the country thinks is untrustworthy and spreads fake news and talks to actual voters, I think that does her more good. The interview was fine. And I didn't think it moved the needle, but if she goes and talks to voters and actually tries to convince them to vote for her instead of just giving an interview to CNN or whatever, I think that could move the needle more because half the country doesn't trust them, the mainstream media.
Well, vice presidents typically don't get a lot of attention, and they often have separate projects that don't get a lot of attention either. I think she really kind of came into her own 2 years ago when Roe v. Wade was overturned, and she really took that issue head on and visited multiple states and really laid the groundwork for that to be the turnout issue that it's likely to be for Democrats.
I don't disagree, but I just think a lot of people have the idea that she didn't do anything, and she needs to try and change that, no matter whether she should have to or not. Like, a lot of people have that idea. She should try and move that needle in a better direction for her. So thank you, guys.
All right, Max, thank you. Max, thank you for joining us always. We love having you. Eleanor, thank you. Very grateful to you for
Okay, thank
taking so
you.
much time to be part of this. And John, thank you also. A couple things, folks, before we go. First of all, again, thank you, Eleanor and John, in particular, for caring so much. Gary, Tyler, Wayne, Cindy, Jeremy, Greg, others with their hands up. Sorry we did not get to you tonight. Grateful to you for participating. Tomorrow, 2, maybe 3 two-ways. 9 a.m. Eastern Time, morning meeting, Sean, Tim, and myself previewing the day ahead. At 6 Eastern Time, Lauren Leader, Majority Rules, an episode on Israel, Gaza, and how the media deals with covering that complexity. And I may be back. I'm traveling tomorrow, so it's going to be complicated. But I may be back for another one of these programs, whatever this is called, to take more of your questions and to talk more about what happened at the end of the day. So 9 a.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Eastern, and TBD. Grateful to everybody for making time, for participating. Everybody say a prayer for Michael Bix's 2 daughters, and we'll see you all at 9 a.m. Thank you.